The notification on my phone buzzed. Quarterly review, 3 p.m., 2 hours away. I had planned the rest of my day around it. Time to finish lunch, polish my slides, maybe even breathe for a moment. But then I heard the voice I'd come to dread. "You've got 2 minutes." I looked up. My boss, Richard, leaned against my cubicle wall, arms folded, that smug little grin plastered on his face. "For what?" I asked, fork hovering over my salad. "The pitch," he said, as if I'd been asleep all day. "Our $10 million account, conference room B, they're waiting." My fork clattered into the plastic container. "That's tomorrow. 3 o'clock, Plans change." He checked his Rolex, tapping the glass. "Now you've got 90 seconds. Don't keep them waiting." My stomach dropped. The pitch, the one I'd spent 6 weeks building, the one I had rehearsed until the words flowed like second nature. The slides were still on my desktop. The printouts? At the shop? The prototype? Unassembled. He knew that. Of course he did. And still he smirked. "Come on, Michelle." Adaptability is part of the job I stood, pulse racing, palms damp. My laptop was mid-update, useless. My files were locked behind company firewalls on mobile. I had nothing but my phone, my memory, and my wits. As I walked toward the elevator, the realization hit like ice water down my spine. This wasn't poor planning. It was sabotage. Richard wanted me to fail. The doors slid shut, sealing me in with my pounding heart. I jabbed at my phone, trying to access cloud storage, blocked. I considered calling IT. Pointless. 30 seconds to the ground floor. 30 seconds to decide how to salvage not just a presentation, but my career. When the elevator opened, the sight nearly stopped me. Through the glass walls of the conference room sat 6 executives in tailored suits, phones in hand, impatience on their faces, and at the head of the table, Mr. Alan Pierce himself, CEO, a man whose signature could shift markets. This was bigger than I thought, and Richard knew it. He intercepted me just outside the door, lowering his voice to a mock whisper. "Where's the deck, Michelle?" "On my desktop," I said evenly, "for tomorrow's meeting." "Well, that's unfortunate." He straightened his tie, then smiled for the first time all day, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Don't embarrass us." Then he pushed the door open and announced with false cheer, "Gentlemen, may I introduce Michelle, our lead on this project. She'll be walking you through everything." 6 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Richard slid into a chair near the door, close enough to jump in if things went miraculously well, far enough to wash his hands if it crashed. "Ms. Johnson," Alan Pierce said, his voice cool, controlled. "We were told you were ready." We flew people in for this. My throat tightened. My hands trembled against my phone. No slides, no notes, nothing but me. "Thank you for making time today," I began, voice steadier than I felt. "Before I begin, may I ask something?" The executives exchanged glances. "Go ahead," Alan said. "What's the primary challenge you're hoping our solution will address?" His CFO frowned. "We've covered that in preliminary talks." "Of course," I said quickly. "But sometimes restating the problem reveals new angles. And I'd like to make sure I address what matters most," Silence stretched. Then, almost despite himself, Alan leaned forward. "All right. Let's see what you've got." I had nothing prepared. Nothing but instinct. But if Richard wanted to watch me drown, I'd at least make him nervous before I sank. The room was silent, all eyes fixed on me, waiting for a polished pitch I didn't have. My phone lay useless in my hand, locked out of the files I'd prepared. Richard sat at the edge of the room, expression carefully neutral, but I caught the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. He thought he'd won already. I forced myself to breathe, steady and slow. If I showed panic, they'd see weakness. And if I faltered, Richard would swoop in, apologize for my incompetence and take over. I had 2 choices: drown in the failure he engineered, or swim in uncharted waters. All of the firms you've met with, I said carefully, have shown you variations of the same thing. Dashboards, reports, data neatly packaged in charts. Correct? Alan Pierce raised an eyebrow, his CFO leaning back in his chair. That's not far off. I nodded, pretending I knew more than I did. The truth was, I had guessed. Industry trend. Every competitor pushed the same tired tools. And that's fine, for companies that want to describe the past. But your challenge isn't understanding yesterday. It's predicting tomorrow. That made Alan pause. He leaned forward, fingers steepled. Go on. I gripped the pen and notepad sitting on the table, grateful someone had left them behind. You're not struggling with visualization. You have analysts who can read graphs. You're struggling with unpredictability, emerging markets, shifts in consumer behavior that don't follow historical models. Your competitors can't see it because they're too busy dressing up old data. The COO exchanged a look with the CFO. I caught the flicker of interest. My pulse steadied. I had something. Alan studied me. So what are you proposing? I drew a quick sketch on the pad, crude boxes and arrows. A predictive model that uses cultural context, not just numbers, to forecast behavior. Imagine knowing not just what your customers bought, but why. What values, traditions, or even local events drive their decisions. That's where the future lies. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Alan's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. Interesting, he said. Behind me, Richard shifted in his chair. I didn't need to look to know he was panicking. This wasn't the disaster he had scripted. One of the executives asked, "How would you build such a model?" I swallowed. Step 1 is identifying blind spots in your current data. May I ask, how many firms proposed custom models tailored to each market? The CFO shook his head. None. Every pitch so far has been off-the-shelf solutions. Exactly. I circled the word context on the pad. That's the gap. They're treating your markets like clones when they aren't. A model that incorporates cultural context doesn't just predict what will sell. It tells you where to invest, when to pivot, and how to stay ahead while others lag behind. The energy in the room shifted. People sat up straighter. Phones were put down. I had their attention. Alan raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. Michelle, was it? Yes. You're telling me your company can deliver this? I hesitated. This was the trap. If I overpromised, Richard would seize it as proof of recklessness. If I undersold, the opportunity would vanish. I'm telling you, I've spent weeks building the foundation of it, I said finally. The details are still in development, but the vision is clear. And the results could redefine how you operate silence again. The longest seconds of my life. Then Alan smiled. Not broadly, but with the weight of someone recognizing something genuine. I've sat through 6 pitches this month. All of them polished. None of them useful. Yours is the first that makes me think differently. He stood, pushing his chair back. The room froze. Richard was already half rising, prepared to apologize, maybe to smooth over my mistake. But Alan spoke first. We need to continue this conversation, he said, looking directly at me. But not in this format. Michelle, I'd like to meet privately. Bring me your full model when it's ready. He handed me his card. Call my office to schedule. I felt the air rush out of me. My hand shook as I took the card, aware of Richard's face tightening, his carefully laid trap collapsing in front of him. Thank you, Mr. Pierce. I managed. The executives began to rise, gathering their belongings. Alan offered a firm nod before leaving, his team trailing behind. The glass doors closed, leaving the room eerily quiet. Richard's mask slipped. His eyes burned with fury. What the hell did you just do? He hissed. My job, I said, clutching Alan's card like a lifeline. You've cost us everything. 10 million gone, have I? I slipped the card into my pocket. Or have you? his jaw clenched, muscles twitching. "This isn't over, Michelle." He was right. It wasn't, because what happened next would unravel everything he thought he controlled. The elevator ride back to our floor felt longer than usual. Richard stood stiff beside me, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the doors. Neither of us spoke, but the tension was suffocating. He had set a trap for me, and instead of falling, I'd climbed out and shaken hands with the one man Richard couldn't afford to lose. When the doors opened, he snapped into motion. My office. Now, people glanced up as he marched me across the open floor. Heads lowered quickly, but I saw it. The flicker of sympathy in a few eyes, curiosity in others. Nobody dared say a word. Richard closed his door with deliberate calm. "Explain yourself," he said, voice low and dangerous. "I adapted to the situation you created," I replied. My tone was steady, but inside my chest hammered. His laugh was sharp, hollow. "Adapted? You went completely off script." "There was no script. You made sure of that." He leaned against his desk, arms folded. "You've been building your own relationship with Pierce instead of representing the company. That ends today." "Alan Pierce asked for me," I said. "Not for you. Not for a team." Richard's eyes narrowed. "If you think I'm letting you steal this client..." "I've stolen nothing." I've worked. His lips curled. "We'll see about that." He opened his laptop and began typing. My phone buzzed almost immediately. An email from Richard addressed to the entire department. "Effective immediately, all client communications must be approved by management. Individual team members are not authorized to make promises or suggestions without prior review. Additionally, all new business development will now require a team-based approach, rather than individual leadership. Richard Palmer, Senior Director." The message was clear. He was clipping my wings in plain sight. I stared at the screen until another ping broke my focus. A message from Zoe, my friend in accounting. "Lunch tomorrow. Need to talk. Important." I typed back, "Noon, the place with the good soup." She replied instantly, "Perfect." By the time I shut my computer down for the night, exhaustion weighed heavy. But fear weighed more. Richard wasn't finished. He'd tasted the threat of losing control, and men like him didn't forgive that. Zoe was already waiting at our usual cafe the next day, nursing a cup of tea. The moment I sat down, she leaned in. "They're watching your emails." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean?" "Richard requested IT access yesterday. Said it was for continuity." She lowered her voice. "Michelle, he's combing through everything." "Can he even do that?" "Technically, yes, if he claims cause." But that's not the worst part. "What is?" "Finance was asked to prepare a severance package. For you, I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth." "What?" "The request came in this morning." He's building a case. I set the spoon down carefully, though my hand shook. "I haven't done anything wrong." "It doesn't matter." Richard's connected. His brother-in-law plays golf with the CEO. If he paints you as insubordinate or, worse, disloyal, you'll be gone before you can defend yourself. I swallowed hard. "So I'm just supposed to sit here and wait for the axe to fall?" Zoe shook her head and slid something across the table. A small flash drive. "Your performance reviews, client testimonials, revenue reports showing exactly what you've brought in for this company. You're entitled to them, but he'll bury them if things turn ugly. Keep them safe." I picked it up slowly. "Why are you helping me?" Her eyes softened. "Because you once helped me when no one else would." The memory cut deep. 2 years ago, when Zoe reported harassment by our former sales director, management brushed her off. I'd gone to HR with supporting evidence from others. It nearly cost me my promotion, but it saved her job. "I haven't forgotten," she said. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't thank me yet. Just be smarter than he expects." Back at the office, a calendar invite popped up. Performance review. Monday, 8 a.m. No agenda. No details. Through the glass walls, I spotted Richard in a closed-door meeting with Trent from legal. Their faces were grave. When Trent noticed me looking, he got up and closed the blinds. A chill ran down my spine. They weren't waiting for Monday. They were accelerating the timeline. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at Zoe's flash drive. My choices were clear. Stay quiet and let Richard end me or fight back. But how? I opened my laptop and created a personal email account. Then I typed carefully, "Miss Chen, due to a potential conflict of interest, I need to discuss something privately with Mr. Pierce. Could you forward her my personal contact information?" I hesitated, then hit send. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Michelle," I answered. "Miss Johnson," came the voice. Calm, firm, Alan Pierce. My heart pounded. "Mr. Pierce, thank you for calling. My assistant shared your message." What's this about a conflict of interest? I took a breath. Because of internal complications, I may not be able to communicate with you through company channels. I thought you deserved to know why. And why is that? Because my boss deliberately sabotaged yesterday's meeting. He blocked access to my materials. He's now restricting communication with you. And I believe he's building a case to fire me. Silence stretched. Then Alan asked, "And the framework you outlined, predictive modeling, cultural context, that was your work?" "Yes, 6 weeks of research. My approach." Pause. "Miss Johnson, are you free tomorrow morning? 7 a.m., Riverside Cafe. Come alone, bring nothing from your company." "Yes," I said, my voice trembling. "Good. We'll talk then." The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone. My career, my future, everything, balanced on the conversation waiting for me at dawn. The Riverside Cafe was nearly empty when I walked in at 6:55 the next morning. Rain streaked down the windows, the kind of soft drizzle that makes the world feel hushed. My stomach churned with nerves, but I forced myself to move steadily, heels clicking against the tiled floor. Alan Pierce sat in the corner, no entourage, no assistant. Just him, crisp suit, steaming coffee, posture straight as though he'd been waiting for me all night. "Michelle," he said, rising slightly as I slid into the booth. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for meeting me," I replied, trying not to sound as anxious as I felt. He nodded once, then studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Tell me why you think your boss wanted you to fail." I took a deep breath. 3 weeks ago, I challenged his strategy in front of senior leadership. He pushes a one-size-fits-all sales approach. We'd lost 2 major clients. I presented data showing why we needed tailored solutions. He didn't appreciate it. Alan's eyes narrowed slightly. From someone who reminds him of his past mistakes. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Before your division, Richard Palmer ran our Midwest account. His rigid methods cost us months of positioning. We terminated the contract early. He nearly sank us in that region. I froze." "You worked with him before?" "Unfortunately. The man doesn't adapt. He covers failure with confidence until the damage is irreparable." Alan leaned closer. "And then he blames others." Pieces clicked together. Richard hadn't just seen me as a threat. He'd seen a reminder of his own humiliation. And when he saw my name tied to the Pierce pitch, the fear of history repeating itself had driven him to sabotage. Alan reached into his briefcase and placed a folder on the table. Inside was a document with the Diamante Group's logo. My pulse quickened. "What is this?" I asked. "Your future, if you want it. Director of Strategic Solutions, salary nearly double what you make now." I stared at the contract, heart racing. "You want to hire me? Based on one improvised conversation?" "Not improvised," Alan corrected. "Insightful. Anyone can polish slides. Few can identify the problem beneath the surface. You did that in minutes. That's not luck. That's vision." I closed the folder slowly. I can't just walk away. I've built relationships with clients. Projects mid-development. Michelle, Alan interrupted gently. Your loyalty is admirable but misplaced. You said yourself he's cutting you out. They're preparing a case against you. Why stay for a company already pushing you to the exit? I hesitated. He was right, but walking away with no transition, leaving my work unfinished, felt wrong. I need a few days, I said finally. You have until Monday, 9 a.m. Alan slid a card across the table. Call me with your decision. He stood, leaving his untouched coffee behind. And Michelle, be careful. Richard won't let this go easily. By Sunday afternoon, the decision was clear. My lists of pros and cons all pointed to the same conclusion. Diamante. Opportunity. Respect. A chance to build something without being undermined at every turn. Monday morning, I dressed professionally, but not for the performance review Richard had scheduled. My bag was already packed with personal belongings. At 7:55, I stepped into Richard's office. He was waiting with Trent from legal. Sit, Richard ordered. I remained standing. What's this about? He opened a folder, sliding a paper across the desk. Evidence of inappropriate communication. You emailed Pierce's assistant from a personal account. That's circumvention of company systems. Grounds for termination. I kept my face calm even as my stomach lurched. One message. To explain why I couldn't reply through company channels. That's enough, Trent said. Given the severity, we're prepared to terminate effective immediately. 2 weeks severance in exchange for signing this non-compete agreement. 2 weeks. After 5 years of loyalty. My jaw tightened. I pushed the papers back toward them. No. Richard smirked. Then we'll fire you for cause. You'll never work in this industry again. Actually, I said quietly, my contract's non-compete only applies if I'm terminated for cause or accept severance. I'm resigning. Effective immediately. For the first time, Richard's mask cracked. You can't just walk out. I already have. You've been stripping me from projects for weeks. Consider that my transition. His face flushed red. You'll regret this, Michelle. I'll make sure of it, I turned at the door. We'll see. As I walked through the office, eyes followed me. Some pitied, some admired. Only Zoe met my gaze and gave the faintest nod. She knew. Outside, I dialed the number Alan had given me. I've made my decision, I said when he answered. And? I accept your offer. With one condition, I need 2 weeks before I start. Why? There are loose ends I need to tie up. Alan paused. Very well. 2 weeks. And Michelle? Yes? I'm glad you're on our side. I hung up, my heart pounding with both fear and relief. 2 weeks. That was all I had. 2 weeks to prepare for what came next. Because Richard Palmer wasn't finished. And neither was I. The next 2 weeks were the longest of my career, yet every day felt sharpened by purpose. While Richard scrambled to rebuild his narrative, I worked quietly behind the scenes. I met with former clients who had left during his tenure, asking careful, open-ended questions about their experiences. I reconnected with colleagues pushed out over the years, listening as they described the same pattern I knew too well. Richard taking credit for wins, shifting blame for losses, silencing anyone who dared challenge him. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't need to. I simply connected the dots. Zoe helped more than she should have, slipping me financial reports, performance data, and internal satisfaction surveys Richard had buried. Patterns emerged. Declines under his leadership, spikes when he was sidelined, client losses directly tied to his streamlined strategies. Meanwhile, I ignored every one of his attempts to bait me. Twice, emails arrived demanding transition notes. Once, he even called late at night, leaving a voicemail dripping with false authority. You're required to comply, Michelle. Don't test me. I deleted it. He'd already tested me enough. The Friday before my official start at Diamante, Zoe texted me. Board meeting tomorrow. He's claiming credit for salvaging Pierce. Says he rescued the account after you abandoned it. I smiled at the screen. Perfect timing. The next morning, I walked into Diamante headquarters, not as an outsider, but as their new director of strategic solutions. Alan greeted me personally and led me into a conference room. Inside sat 6 people I recognized, board members from my former company. "Miss Johnson," the chairman said, "your timing is impeccable. We were just discussing Mr. Palmer's presentation." For the next 2 hours, I listened as Alan laid out what we had compiled. Richard's history across 3 companies, client after client leaving under his watch, staff turnover, retaliation against dissenters, financial losses disguised as restructuring. It wasn't vindictive. It was factual. At the end, Alan delivered the final blow. Mr. Palmer claims to have saved this account. Meanwhile, we are finalizing a multi-year partnership with the person he pushed out. The board members sat in stunned silence. Then the chairman spoke, voice grim. "We appreciate this information. Appropriate action will be taken immediately." I said nothing. I didn't need to. My work was already done. 3 days later, an internal memo announced Richard's resignation to pursue other opportunities. Rumors swirled about an investigation into management practices. Former employees were being contacted for interviews. Zoe texted me. Board called emergency session. He was escorted out. I typed back only one word. Finally. 6 months passed in a blur. At Diamante, I thrived. The predictive cultural model I'd outlined in desperation during that ambush meeting became our flagship product. My team grew. My ideas weren't dismissed. They were celebrated. But life has a way of circling back. At the industry conference in Atlanta, as I reviewed my slides backstage, a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Richard. Cheaper suit. Hollow eyes. A man who looked like he'd aged 10 years and 6 months. "Michelle," he said quietly, "congratulations on your success." I kept my expression cool. "What do you want, Richard?" He shifted, clearing his throat. "I've been consulting independently. It's been difficult. I wondered if we might clear the air, perhaps discuss collaboration." There it was. Not remorse, not apology. Just another angle, another ladder to climb. "There's nothing to discuss," I said. His mask slipped, bitterness flashing in his eyes. "You planned this. You used Pierce to take me down." "No," I said evenly. "You took yourself down. I just stopped covering for you." "The truth is you got lucky," he spat. "If Pierce hadn't taken a shine to you—" "It wasn't luck," I interrupted. "It was preparation meeting opportunity. Something you never understood," a staffer poked her head in. "Miss Johnson, you're on in 5 minutes." Richard stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." I walked past him without looking back. The stage lights were blinding, but the applause was real. As I presented our platform, one I'd built with my team, one rooted in everything Richard had dismissed, I caught a glimpse of him slipping out the back. He couldn't bear to watch. And that was my revenge. Not a dramatic outburst, not a public takedown, but something quieter, sharper, and far more lasting. I had stripped away the facade he'd built and let the truth show itself. I didn't destroy Richard Palmer. He did that all on his own. I simply refused to let him destroy me.